The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with its usual noise. Hundreds of alien voices mixed together as delegates from across the galaxy discussed trade deals and peace treaties. The massive dome overhead showed stars from every corner of known space, reminding everyone of how big their community had become. Ambassador Deho sat quietly in the human section. His dark eyes watched the other delegates argue about mining rights on some distant world. The humans had been part of this council for over 200 years now. They had helped build hospitals, shared their technology, and fought alongside alien friends in countless wars. But today felt different. Deho looked at his fellow humans sitting nearby. Dr. Kyung-ho, who had spent 30 years sharing medical knowledge with alien doctors. Captain Sujin, whose ships protected trade routes that fed billions of people. Engineer Tae-wan, who had designed the power systems that kept this very building running. All of them had the same tired look in their eyes. For months, the council had been making decisions without asking humans what they thought. When humans tried to speak, other delegates would talk over them or ignore their ideas completely. Yesterday, when Deho had warned about problems with the new mining plan, Senator Zixnall had actually laughed. Humans always worry too much, the tall, blue-skinned Kelthoid had said. Your species thinks with emotions instead of logic. That comment still burned in Deho's mind. Now High Chancellor Morden was giving another long speech about how great the council was. The massive, rock-like Vextari leader praised every species for their contributions. He talked about Kelthoid mathematics, Arctanian art, and Nexari military strength. He did not mention humans at all. Deho stood up slowly. The movement was quiet, but somehow every eye in the great hall turned to look at him. The ambassador reached into his coat and pulled out a small crystal, the kind used to store important data. Without saying a word, he walked down the steps toward the center of the hall. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Even Chancellor Morden stopped talking and watched with confusion. Deho placed the crystal on the central podium where everyone could see it. Then he turned around and walked toward the exit. Dr. Kyung-ho stood up and followed him, then Captain Sujin, then Engineer Tae-wan. One by one, every human in the Great Hall rose from their seats and followed their ambassador out. The aliens sat frozen, watching this strange parade. Some tried to call out questions, but the humans did not answer. They just kept walking until the great doors closed behind them. Chancellor Morden rushed to the crystal and activated it. A hologram of Deho appeared, but his face was calm and cold. Effective immediately, the recording said, humanity withdraws from all Galactic Council activities, treaties, and collaborative efforts. This decision is final and non-negotiable. That was all. No explanation, no list of complaints, no demands for changes. Just silence. At the same time, across the galaxy, other humans were making their own quiet exits. Captain Sujin stood on the bridge of her warship, the Soul's Pride. She had just received encrypted orders from Earth. Around her, the mixed crew of humans and aliens worked at their stations like always. Navigator Boram, she said quietly. Set course for human space, maximum speed. Boram, a young human woman, looked confused, but began entering coordinates. Captain, what about the patrol schedule? The Joric merchant ships are expecting us to escort them through the Maelstrom Nebula tomorrow. Change of plans, Sujin said. She opened a channel to the other ships in her fleet. All of them had human captains. All vessels, this is Captain Sujin. We are returning to human territory immediately. Follow my lead. The alien crews on the ships started asking questions, but the human officers just did their jobs. Within an hour, 12 human warships had left their patrol zones and were heading home. Captain Grixton of the Joric merchant vessel Far Trader watched the human ships disappear with growing worry. His people had been using human escorts for 50 years. The humans knew every safe path through the dangerous nebula. Without them, his cargo would rot before he could find another route. He sent message after message to Captain Minho, who usually guided their convoys. But all he got back were automated responses saying the humans were no longer available for escort duties. Meanwhile, at the medical research station on Kepler Prime, Dr. Kyung-ho was packing his personal belongings. His alien colleagues watched him with confusion and worry. "But doctor," said Keltara, a Zephyrian scientist with purple skin and large eyes, "we are so close to finishing the cure for the Corinthian virus. Your research on human immune systems is the key to everything." Dr. Kyung-ho looked at his friend sadly. They had worked together for 15 years. "I am sorry, Keltara. I have to go." "But why?" she asked. "Did someone say something wrong? Are you angry about the council meeting yesterday?" The human doctor just shook his head and continued packing. His assistant Yunbi was already deleting files from the shared research database. Decades of medical discoveries that humans had freely shared were being locked away. All across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human engineers left construction projects half-finished. Human diplomats walked away from peace talks that had taken months to arrange. Human traders closed their routes and headed home. The aliens they left behind stood around looking lost and confused. Many had worked with humans for years and considered them friends. But none of the humans would explain what was happening. Back on Earth, President Hyejin sat in her office reading reports. Defense Minister Sang-woo stood nearby, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. "The alien news networks are going crazy," Sang-woo said. "They are calling it the Great Human Mystery. Some think we are planning a war. Others think we all got sick with some disease." President Hyejin smiled grimly. "Let them wonder. For 200 years, we have been the galaxy's helpful neighbors. We fixed their problems, shared our knowledge, and asked for nothing in return. And how did they thank us? By treating us like children who did not know anything." Foreign Affairs Director Yuna entered the room carrying a tablet full of incoming messages. "The Council is sending dozens of requests for meetings," she reported. "Chancellor Mordun wants to know what demands we have. Senator Zixnal is offering trade deals. Even Admiral Kethvar is asking what military support we need." "What did you tell them?" the president asked. "Nothing," Yuna replied. "Just like you ordered. Complete silence." President Hyejin nodded and looked out her window at the blue sky of Earth. For the first time in years, every human ship and station was coming home. Every human citizen was safe within their own borders. The galaxy had made it clear that they did not need human help. Now they would get exactly what they had asked for. Nothing at all. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared. At first, many aliens thought it was just a strange protest that would end soon. They expected angry messages or lists of demands. Instead, they got nothing but silence. The Galactic Council tried to continue their work as usual, but cracks were already showing. On the Zephyrian colony world of New Haven, Chief Medical Officer Keltara stared at her computer screen with growing panic. The Corinthian virus had broken out again, and this time it was spreading fast. Usually she would contact Dr. Kyung-ho and his human medical team. Their knowledge of diseases was better than anyone else's in the galaxy, but the humans were gone. Keltara had tried everything she could think of. She called every alien doctor she knew. She searched through old research papers. She even tried to guess what the humans would do. Nothing worked. The virus kept spreading, and people kept dying. "Doctor," said her assistant, a young Zephyrian, named Pelnix, "we have 50 new cases today. The hospitals are getting full." Keltara closed her eyes and tried to remember something, anything that Dr. Kyung-ho had taught her. The human doctor always seemed to know exactly what to do. He would study the virus, understand how it worked, and then create a cure that was simple and effective. But Keltara realized she had never really learned how he did it. She had just watched and followed his instructions. Now, without his guidance, she felt lost. Meanwhile, in the shipping lanes near the Maelstrom Nebula, Captain Grixton was having his own problems. His merchant ship Far Trader sat dead in space, along with 20 other vessels. They had been waiting for 3 days, hoping someone could guide them through the dangerous nebula. The Maelstrom was full of energy storms and gravity wells that could tear a ship apart. Only the most skilled pilots could navigate through it safely. For 50 years, human captains had guided alien ships along secret routes that made the journey quick and safe. Now those routes were a mystery. "Captain," said his first officer, Juktar, We could try to go around the nebula, but it would take 6 months. Our food will spoil by then. Grixton looked at the swirling clouds of the maelstrom on his screen. He had watched Captain Minho navigate this maze hundreds of times. The human pilot would adjust their course in tiny ways that seemed random, but somehow always kept them safe. I thought I understood how he did it, Grixton said quietly. But I was wrong. We only saw the outside of his skill. We never learned the real knowledge underneath. He sent out a desperate message to any ship in the area. This is Captain Grixton of the Far Trader. We need help getting through the maelstrom. We'll pay any price for safe passage. 3 days later, he was still waiting for an answer. The problems were getting worse in other parts of the galaxy too. On the border between Nexari and Joric space, 2 fleets faced each other with weapons ready. This kind of tension had happened many times before, but usually human peacekeepers would arrive to calm things down. Admiral Kethvar of the Nexari remembered how human diplomats had a special way of talking to both sides and finding solutions that made everyone happy, but there were no humans coming this time. "Admiral," said his tactical officer, "the Joric ships are moving into attack formation." Admiral Kethvar knew he had 2 choices, attack first or retreat and look weak. In the old days, he would have called Captain Sujin or one of her human officers. They always found a third option that no one else had thought of. Now he was on his own. "Prepare weapons," he ordered, hoping he was making the right choice. Back at the Galactic Council headquarters, High Chancellor Morden was discovering just how much the humans had been doing behind the scenes. The building's power systems were failing. The environmental controls could not keep the air clean. Even the food replicators were breaking down. "How is this possible?" Morden asked Chief Engineer Yex Wan, a small, green-skinned alien who had worked at the headquarters for 30 years. "Sir," Yex Wan said nervously, "it turns out the humans redesigned most of our systems over the years. They said they were making small improvements, but we never paid attention to the details. Now I cannot figure out how anything works." Morden walked through the great hall where he had given so many speeches. Half the lights were flickering. The beautiful star display overhead was showing the wrong constellations. The air smelled stale because the recycling systems were not working properly. "What about the technical manuals?" he asked. "The humans took them all," Yexwan replied. "Or maybe they were never written down. I think the humans just understood these things naturally." The Chancellor felt a cold fear growing in his chest. If their own headquarters was falling apart, what was happening to the rest of the galaxy? He got his answer from the reports that flooded in over the next few weeks. The Helix manufacturing worlds had stopped producing goods. Their automated factories, designed with human help, were shutting down one by one. Chief Engineer Nixdal sent desperate messages explaining that the human-built systems were too complex for anyone else to understand. The Great Archive on Proxima Centauri was losing data every day. The human-designed storage systems were failing, and thousands of years of collected knowledge were disappearing forever. Trade routes that had connected the galaxy for centuries were breaking down. Human logistics experts had quietly managed the flow of goods between worlds, making sure everything arrived on time and in good condition. Without them, merchant ships were getting lost, cargo was spoiling, and entire planets were running out of basic supplies. Most disturbing of all were the reports from the outer rim of the galaxy. The savage marauders, a group of pirates and raiders, had started attacking Council worlds. For decades, human military strategists had kept them under control with clever tactics and well-planned defenses. Now the marauders were winning every battle. Admiral Kethvar studied the battle reports with growing confusion. How did the humans always know what the enemy would do? He asked his staff officers. "We thought they were just lucky," replied Colonel Vormax. "But looking at these patterns, I think they understood something about warfare that we missed." The reports painted a clear picture. Without human guidance, the Council's military was failing badly. Ships were being destroyed. Colonies were being abandoned. Fear was spreading through the galaxy. High Chancellor Morden finally decided to try direct contact with Earth. He sent his best diplomat Ambassador Rai Su, to the edge of human space with a simple message. Please tell us what you want. We are ready to listen. But when Ambassador Rai Su reached the human border, he found it guarded by a fleet of human warships. The lead ship sent a polite but firm message. You are not authorized to enter human space. Please return to Council territory. But I have an urgent message from the High Chancellor. Rai Su replied. All communications should be directed to the Galactic Council, came the automated response. Refer to the final statement provided to the Council. That was all. No anger, no threats, no emotion at all. Just the same cold silence that had started this whole crisis. Ambassador Rai Su returned to the Council with empty hands and a growing understanding of how serious this situation had become. The humans were not playing games or making a political statement. They were really gone. And for the first time in galactic history, the other species were learning what their civilization looked like without human help. It was not a pretty sight. 6 months after the humans went silent, the galaxy was starting to fall apart. The problems that had seemed manageable at first were now growing bigger every day. What looked like small technical issues had become disasters that threatened entire star systems. On the manufacturing world of Helix Prime, Chief Engineer Nixdal stood in the center of Production Complex 7 and watched his life's work crumble around him. The massive factory had been built with human help 20 years ago. Back then, engineer Taiwan had spent months working with Nixdal to design the perfect automated system. Your people think differently than ours, Taiwan had said with a smile. We see problems that you miss and you see solutions that we don't. Together we can build something amazing. They had been right. The factory became the most efficient production center in the galaxy. It could make everything from computer chips to spaceship engines with perfect precision. Other species came from across the galaxy to study their methods, but now the beautiful system was dying. Sir, said his assistant, a young engineer named Colrex, production line 12 just shut down completely. That's the 7th one this week. Nixdal walked over to a control panel covered in flashing red lights. He had operated these machines for 20 years, but he was realizing that he had never really understood how they worked. The human engineers had built layers of smart programming that seemed to think for themselves. When something went wrong, the system would fix itself automatically. When demand changed, it would adjust production without being told. When new materials arrived, it would figure out the best way to use them. Nixdal had thought this was normal. Now he knew it was genius. Have you tried restarting the quantum processors? Asked Colrex. I tried everything, Nixdal replied, his voice full of despair. The problem is not with individual parts. The whole system is too smart for us. It's like trying to perform surgery on a brain when you only understand how bones work. He looked around at the silent machines that had once hummed with perfect efficiency. We never asked the humans to teach us how it really worked. We just enjoyed the results. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out everywhere. At the Great Archive on Proxima Centauri, librarian Lumtari watched in horror as another section of ancient knowledge disappeared forever. The human-designed storage systems had seemed indestructible. They could keep information safe for thousands of years and find any piece of data in seconds. But the systems were failing now, and no one knew how to fix them. We lost the entire Vextari historical section today, reported her assistant, Yexwan. 5,000 years of culture and science gone forever. Lumtari felt sick. She had spent her whole life protecting the accumulated knowledge of the galaxy. The humans had given them tools that made that job easy. Too easy, it seemed. Did we ever ask them to explain how the storage systems worked? She wondered out loud. Why would we? Yexwan replied. They worked perfectly. We thought they always would. Now they were learning that perfectly was not the same as forever. The problems were getting worse in space too. Captain Sujin watched from the bridge of her ship as another group of alien vessels approached the human border. These were not diplomats or merchants, they were refugees. Captain, said her tactical officer Jun Seo. That's the 4th refugee fleet this week. They're saying their supply lines have collapsed. Sujin studied the ships on her screen. She recognized some of them. There was Captain Grixton's Far Trader, along with dozens of other vessels she had escorted through dangerous space over the years. "Sir," said Navigator Boram, "they're requesting permission to enter human space. They say they're running out of food and medical supplies." Sujin felt a pain in her chest. These people had been her friends and allies. She had shared meals with Captain Grixton. She had helped save his ship from pirates more than once, but her orders were clear. "Send them the standard message," she said quietly. "No one enters human space without authorization from Earth." "But Captain," Boram protested, "some of those ships have children on board." "I know," Sujin replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Send the message." She watched the refugee ships turn away and head back into the chaos of the galaxy. Part of her wanted to help them, but she also knew that this was exactly what needed to happen. The galaxy had to learn what it meant to lose humanity's help, even if it was painful to watch. The military situation was becoming a complete disaster. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command center, looking at a map that showed nothing but bad news. Red markers indicated worlds under attack. Yellow markers showed systems that had gone silent. Green markers, representing safe council territory, were becoming rare. "Sir," reported his intelligence officer, Major Vormax, "the savage marauders have taken the Kepler system. That's 12 worlds in the past month." Admiral Kethvar shook his head in frustration. "How did we stop them before? What were the IT humans doing that we're not?" "I've been studying the old battle reports," Vormax replied. "The humans never used more ships or better weapons than us, but somehow they always knew exactly where the enemy would attack next." "Luck?" the Admiral asked hopefully. "No, sir, I think it was something else. The humans seemed to understand how their enemies thought. They could predict behavior patterns that we can't see." Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display. The savage marauders were using the same strategies they had always used. The difference was that the humans were no longer there to counter them. "It's like playing a game when you don't know the rules," he said. "We're moving our pieces, but we don't understand the board." Back at the council headquarters, High Chancellor Morden was dealing with his own crisis. The building itself was falling apart, but that was nothing compared to the political chaos. 3 member species had already left the council, saying they needed to focus on their own survival. 5 more were threatening to do the same. The trade agreements that held the galaxy together were being abandoned one by one. "Sir," said his aide, Secretary Pelnara, "Ambassador Raisu is requesting another meeting. He says he has a new plan to contact the humans." Morden looked up from a stack of disaster reports. "What kind of plan?" "He wants to send a personal message to every human leader individually. Maybe if we bypass their government and appeal directly to their people." "Do it," Morden said without hesitation. "Try anything." But Ambassador Raisu's plan failed just like all the others. Every message sent to human space got the same automated response. "Refer to the final statement provided to the Galactic Council." The humans were not just ignoring the Council's government, they were ignoring the entire galaxy. As the months passed, a terrible understanding began to spread through the remaining Council members. The humans had not just been participants in galactic civilization, they had been its hidden foundation. They had quietly fixed problems that other species didn't even know existed. They had maintained systems that everyone else took for granted. They had prevented conflicts that would have destroyed entire worlds, and they had done it all without asking for credit or special treatment. Now that foundation was gone, and the whole structure was collapsing. Dr. Keltara sat in her empty laboratory on New Haven, looking at the final casualty report from the Corinthian plague. Over 2 million Zephyrians had died, and the disease was still spreading to other worlds. She thought about all the times she had watched Dr. Kyung-ho work. The human doctor would study a problem for hours, ask strange questions that seemed unrelated, and then suddenly announce a solution that no one else had considered. "How did you always know what to do?" she whispered to the empty room. She would never get an answer. The humans were gone, and they were never coming back. The galaxy was learning, too late, what it had lost when it let humanity slip away into silence. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was dying. What had started as small problems and inconveniences had become a complete collapse of civilization. Entire star systems had gone dark. Billions of people were hungry, sick, or dead. The great alliance that had connected thousands of worlds for centuries was nothing but a memory. Dr. Keltera stood at the edge of a mass grave on New Haven, watching as another 100 bodies were laid to rest. The Corinthian plague had spread to 17 systems now. Without human medical knowledge, no one could stop it. She was not alone at the gravesite. Dr. Zalthur, the galaxy's most famous scientist, had arrived from the Arctanian homeworld 3 days ago. With him came representatives from every major medical organization in known space. Dr. Keltara, said Zalthur, his voice hollow with defeat. We have tried everything. Our combined knowledge is still not enough. Keltara nodded, sadly. I keep thinking about something Dr. Kyung-ho once told me. He said that understanding disease was not about knowing facts. It was about seeing patterns that others miss. What kind of patterns? Asked Dr. Morgeth, a tall alien with gray skin and large eyes. I don't know, Keltara admitted. I watched him work for 15 years, but I never really learned how he thought. None of us did. Dr. Zalthur pulled out a data pad filled with research notes. We have collected every piece of human medical research we could find. Old papers, recorded lectures, even personal notes that humans left behind. But it's like having pieces of a puzzle without knowing what the picture looks like. The humans didn't just know more than us, said Dr. Morgeth quietly. They thought differently than us. They saw connections that our minds cannot make. The doctors stood in silence, watching as more bodies were brought to the grave. Each one represented a failure of their science and a reminder of what they had lost when the humans disappeared. Meanwhile, in space near the Maelstrom Nebula, a different kind of disaster was unfolding. Captain Grixton had been trying to find a safe route through the nebula for 8 months now. His ship Far Trader was part of a convoy of over 300 vessels, all loaded with supplies for the inner systems. The food and medicine they carried could save millions of lives, but only if they could deliver it. Captain, said his navigator Juktar, we lost 2 more ships in the storm fields today. That makes 47 ships lost this month. Grixton stared at the swirling chaos of the maelstrom on his screen. He had made this journey hundreds of times with human guides. Captain Minho had always made it look easy, adjusting their course with small movements that seemed random but kept them perfectly safe. I thought I understood the route, Grixton said for the 100th time. But watching someone do something is not the same as knowing how to do it yourself. Behind them, the convoy stretched for millions of kilometers. Merchant ships, medical vessels, and emergency supply transports all waited for guidance that would never come. Some captains had already given up and turned back. Others had tried to find their own way through the nebula and vanished forever. Sir, said Communications Officer Veltara, we are receiving more requests from the inner systems. They're saying people are dying without these supplies. Grixton closed his eyes. He was trapped between 2 impossible choices. Risk the convoy in the nebula and probably lose most of it, or turn back and let people die from starvation and disease. What would Captain Minho do? He wondered out loud. But Captain Minho was gone, along with all the other humans who had made the impossible look simple. The military situation was even worse. Admiral Kethvar sat in his damaged command ship, reading the latest battle reports with growing despair. The savage marauders had destroyed another fleet of council ships, and now they were attacking the core systems directly. Admiral, said Colonel Vormax, we lost contact with the defense fleet at Rigel. That's our 6th fleet in 2 months. Admiral Kethvar looked at his tactical display. Red markers showing enemy forces now covered half the galaxy. The green markers representing council forces were disappearing one by one. How many ships do we have left? He asked. Maybe 200, scattered across 12 systems. Vormax replied. The Marauders have at least 500, and they're organized into groups that support each other perfectly. The Admiral studied the enemy movement patterns on his screen. The savage Marauders were using tactics that were brutal, but effective. They would attack weak points, retreat when faced with strong resistance, and always seemed to know exactly where Council forces would be. The humans fought these same enemies for decades, he said. They won almost every battle, usually with fewer ships than we have now. How did they do it? I've been studying their old reports, Formax said. The humans didn't just react to enemy attacks. They seemed to predict them days or weeks in advance. They would move their ships to exactly the right places at exactly the right times. Are you saying they could see the future? No, sir. I think they could see patterns that we cannot. The Marauders' behavior follows rules, but they're rules that human minds understood and ours do not. Admiral Kethvar felt a cold fear growing in his chest. Without the ability to predict enemy movements, the Council forces were doomed. They were fighting blind against an enemy that followed a logic they could not understand. Back on Earth, President Hye Jin sat in her office reading intelligence reports about the galactic situation. The news was terrible, but not surprising. "Ma'am," said Defense Minister Sang-woo, "our border patrol ships are reporting more refugee fleets every day. Yesterday alone, we turned away 15,000 ships requesting asylum." President Hye Jin nodded sadly. "I know it's hard to watch, but this is what had to happen. The galaxy needed to learn what they were losing." Foreign Affairs Director Yu Na entered the room carrying a special communication device. "Ma'am, we just received this transmission. It's from the remnants of the Galactic Council. They're requesting direct communication with you personally." The president activated the device and a hologram of High Chancellor Mordun appeared. The massive alien looked older and more tired than she remembered. "President Hye Jin," he began, "I am speaking to you not as a leader, but as someone who is watching his civilization die. We know we made mistakes. We know we took your people for granted, but please, for the sake of billions of innocent lives, tell us what we must do to earn humanity's help again." The hologram showed scenes from across the galaxy. Children dying from diseases that humans could have cured easily. Ships lost in space because they could not navigate without human guidance. Worlds under attack because alien military leaders did not understand the strategies that humans had mastered. "We are not asking you to rejoin the Council," Morden continued. "We are not demanding your forgiveness. We are simply begging for mercy. Tell us what you want and we will give it to you. Tell us what we did wrong and we will fix it. Just, please do not let billions of people die for our mistakes." The hologram ended, and the room fell silent. President Hye Jin sat quietly for a long moment, thinking about all the years when humans had offered help and been ignored or dismissed. She thought about the countless times human solutions had been called too emotional or unnecessarily complex. "What should we tell them?" asked Yuna. The president reached over to her computer and composed a brief message. She sent it to the automated response system that handled all communications from the galaxy. The message was the same one that had been sent for over a year. Refer to the final statement provided to the Galactic Council. No apologies, no negotiations, no mercy, just silence. The galaxy had gotten exactly what it had asked for, a civilization without human interference. Now they could live with the results. 2 years after humanity went silent, the Galactic Council no longer existed. The great hall where representatives from 1,000 worlds once gathered was empty and dark. The beautiful star display overhead had gone out months ago. The building itself was falling apart, with broken windows and failing life support systems that no one knew how to fix. High Chancellor Mordun sat alone in his old office, surrounded by boxes of files that no one would ever read again. Through his window, he could see the city that had once been the center of galactic civilization. Now it was mostly empty. The alien diplomats, traders, and workers had all gone home to their own worlds, trying to survive in a galaxy that no longer had any central organization. "Sir," said his last remaining aide, a young Vextari named Kolthek, "the final evacuation transport is ready to leave. Are you coming?" Morden shook his head slowly. "I will stay here a little longer. Someone should be here when the humans finally answer our messages." Kolthek looked confused. "Sir, the humans have not answered any messages for 2 years. What makes you think they will start now?" The old chancellor picked up a data crystal from his desk. It was the same crystal that Ambassador De Ho had left in the Great Hall on that terrible day when everything changed. Because, Morden said quietly, they are still out there. They are still alive. And someday, maybe they will remember that we were friends once. But Koltek was right to be doubtful. The humans showed no signs of ending their silence. Across the galaxy, the survivors of the Great Collapse had learned to live in a much smaller, darker universe. On New Haven, Dr. Keltara worked in a medical facility that was more like a field hospital than the advanced research center she had once known. The Corinthian plague had finally burned itself out, but only after killing over 50 million people across 17 worlds. "Doctor," said her assistant Pelnix, "the supply ship from Vextar Prime has arrived. They brought more basic medicines." Keltara nodded and continued working on a patient who had a simple infection that would have been easy to cure in the old days. Now, with their limited supplies and knowledge, she could only hope the alien's natural immune system would be strong enough. "Pelnix," she said, "do you remember the human medical station that used to be in this sector? The one Dr. Kyung-ho built?" "Yes, I remember. Sometimes I dream that I visit that station and ask him how to cure this infection. In my dreams, he always knows exactly what to do." She paused in her work and looked up. "Do you think he would help us if he could?" Pelnix was quiet for a moment. "I think Dr. Kyung-ho cared about helping people more than anything else, but I also think the humans made a choice, and they are sticking to it no matter how hard it is." That was probably true. Scattered throughout the galaxy were small research stations and medical facilities that had been abandoned when the humans left. Some aliens had tried to use the equipment, but most of it was too advanced for anyone else to understand. These places had become almost like shrines. People would visit them and remember the time when medicine was advanced and diseases could be cured quickly. They called them ghost stations because the spirit of human knowledge seemed to haunt them. At one of these ghost stations near the Maelstrom Nebula, engineer Colrex worked alone, trying to understand the navigation system that Captain Minho had built. The station was designed to guide ships safely through the dangerous nebula, but only humans had known how to operate it. "Computer," Colrex said to the main terminal, "show me the safe route to Sector 7. "Access denied," the computer replied, in a pleasant human voice. "Authorization required from Certified Navigation Officer." Colrex had been trying different approaches for months. He had studied every piece of documentation he could find. He had interviewed aliens who had worked with human navigators. He had even tried to guess the passwords that might unlock the system. Nothing worked. "Please," he said to the empty room. "People are dying because they cannot get supplies through the nebula. If any humans can hear this, please help us." But there was only silence. The computer system had been programmed to respond only to humans, and the humans were gone. Meanwhile, Captain Su-Jin continued her patrol along the edge of human space. Her ship Soul's Pride had been guarding the border for 2 years now, turning away anyone who tried to enter without permission. "Captain," said Navigator Boram, "long-range sensors are detecting another refugee fleet. About 500 ships moving slowly toward our position." Su-Jin looked at the display showing the approaching vessels. She had turned away thousands of ships over the past 2 years. Each time it got a little harder to watch them disappear back into the darkness of a failing galaxy. "Any distress signals?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. They're reporting shortages of food, medicine, and fuel. Some of the signals mention children on board." Su-Jin closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was the hardest part of her job. These people had been allies and friends. Some of them were probably individuals she had worked with during her years of service with the Galactic Fleet. But her orders were clear, and she understood why they were necessary. "Send them the standard message," she said. "No unauthorized entry into human space." "Captain," said her tactical officer Jun Seo, "some of these ships are barely functioning. If they cannot find supplies soon, they might not survive the journey to the nearest alien world." "I know," Su-Jin replied. "But this is what had to happen. The galaxy chose to live without human help. Now they have to learn what that really means." She watched the refugee fleet slowly change course and head away from human space. Part of her wanted to help them, but she also knew that every act of mercy would make it easier for the aliens to ignore the lesson they needed to learn. The humans had not withdrawn out of anger or cruelty. They had withdrawn because it was the only way to show the galaxy what they had been contributing all along. On Earth, President Hye-jin sat in her garden, reading the final report from Intelligence Director Chang Min. The document contained detailed information about the state of the galaxy after 2 years of human absence. "The collapse is complete," Chang Min had written. "Galactic civilization as we knew it no longer exists. Most worlds have returned to local governance. Trade between distant systems has almost stopped. The savage marauders now control about 30% of former council space. Disease and starvation are common. The total death count is estimated at over 2 billion beings." President Hye-jin set down the report and looked up at the sky. Somewhere out there, people who had once been friends and allies were struggling to survive in a universe that had become cold and dangerous. "Was it worth it?" asked a voice behind her. She turned to see Elder Counselor In-soo, the oldest and wisest member of her government. He had been against the withdrawal at first, arguing that humanity had a moral duty to help others regardless of how they were treated. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Maybe future generations will decide that we were cruel to let so many people suffer for the mistakes of their leaders." In-soo sat down beside her on a stone bench. "Or maybe they will understand that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone learn from their own mistakes." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors of orange and red. "Ma'am," said a young aide who approached them carefully, "we just received another message from the Galactic Remnant governments. They are offering to make you the supreme leader of a new galactic federation. They say they will accept any terms you want if humanity will just agree to help again." President Hye-jin did not even look up from the sunset. "Send them the standard response." The aide nodded and walked away. In-soo chuckled quietly. "They still don't understand, do they?" "No," the president replied. "They think this is about power or revenge. They think we want to control them or punish them. They don't realize that we simply want them to learn to solve their own problems. And what if they never learn?" President Hye-jin was quiet for a long moment. "Then they will build a smaller, simpler civilization that fits their abilities, and maybe that will be better for everyone in the long run." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, automated response systems across human space continued to send the same message they had been sending for 2 years. Refer to the final statement provided to the Galactic Council. No words of anger, no threats of war, no demands for apologies, just silence. The galaxy had asked for a universe without human interference, and humanity had given them exactly that. Whether the surviving civilizations would learn to thrive on their own, or continue to struggle in the darkness they had chosen, remained to be seen. But one thing was certain. The humans would not return until the galaxy proved it was ready to value what they had to offer, and that day seemed very far away.